Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. Tonight, guitarist Charlie Hunter is playing selections off his brand new solo CD, Public Domain. And what he did was he took some standards, I'm talking about jazz standards of the Great American Songbook, and put it in his own flair and own flavor. Tonight he's being joined tonight by drummer Adam Cruz, and this is part of the duo series that he's been playing all week here at the Jazz Standard. Public Domain, this is your brand new CD, and this is a little departure from everything you've done. This is completely standards, and you're doing it on a solo tip.
Yes, solo, stripped down, ready for the recession.
Is that by choice? Because all of your albums, you've done some form of a standard or a classic ballad or a classic rock or soul song. How did you go about choosing the songs for this?
Well, you know, my grandfather, who is a New Yorker, and he's going to be 100 in a couple months, actually. I figured that he knew all the songs, the Public Domain songs, from when he was growing up. He was born in 1911, so I just had him, I said, pick these songs out, find the ones you like. So he picked out about 80 songs, and from there I kind of whittled them down to 10 that I liked. Or whatever is on the record that I could do something with, and yeah, so that's how it happened.
What was the process like? Because guitarists or even just musicians in general, they do a solo record, and there has to be some kind of ambiance or some kind of mood that you were in. How did you record this album?
Well, I mean, I just recorded it in like 3 or 4 hours, actually, but I spent a while, shedding the various songs and trying to get. My attitude about it was, well, the solo guitar stuff that I like best is like Blind Blake and Joseph Spence and stuff that really has its own groove to it and drum beat essentially behind it. So I kind of wanted to do that with this. Every song, I felt like what I wanted to do was start out with a drum groove and a beat. Like I think I did Danny Boy on there, and the beat was. Boom, but it's not present, and like Alexander's Ragtime Band is boom, boom, but you don't really hear that. It's only implied in what I'm doing, and the time has to be kept constant, and the groove has to be kept constant through it, and that's kind of what my goal was.
Indiana is another track on the CD that's very unique and very interesting. I mean, just how do you put a contemporary twist on songs like that?
Well, I don't know if it's contemporary. I mean, I live in 2011, and you know, so I just let it be whatever it's going to be. And I mean, a song like Indiana, you know, I just thought of it as Freddie Green. Really, that's all I was thinking about. Like, how would he play this song? You know, in terms of his feel, and that's what I tried to get that with that song. You know.
Tonight you have done something that you've done throughout your career off and on, is the duo.
Suck? Yeah.
No, but you've done the duo variation for many years. Last night you had the legendary Adam Cruz on drums. Yeah. And tonight you had Mr. Kolb on drums.
Yeah.
What is it about the drum guitar duos that you feel very at ease with?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's drum guitar, because what I do is not like guitar in that sense, because it really is almost closer to drums than it is to guitar or bass. You know what I mean? Because the main element of what I do is the counterpoint. You know, no linear solo is really of great importance, although it's important to make those gestures. The most important, or no tricky bass line is of really the most important. The most important thing is the counterpoint and the interaction with the drummer, who's also creating counterpoint. And that, I think, for me, is why I always have that kind of connection. You know, I mean, that's the first thing I hear are the drums, and I think it's really, in this kind of music, it's the most important thing to always hear. Even if they're not present, you should be hearing it in your head at all times, you know.
You know, because one of the albums you recorded back was the duo album you did with Bobby Privet, who played with you, I believe it was Wednesday.
Yeah.
Now, that was pretty much a funky, but it was kind of avant-garde-ish in a way.
Yeah, well, Bobby is like, the thing about Bobby is that, I mean, although he looks like he's in his 20s, you know, he's been around, and he, you know, I mean, he really learned how to play all that stuff in the late 60s and the early 70s, so he's got this real great jazz feel and this kind of rock feel, but he's also a composer, you know, like a serious composer. So, you know, I learned a lot from Bobby in terms of just how to think compositionally and think in landscapes and gestures and stuff like that, and it's always a ball playing with him. It's a real challenge just for my brain.
Thank you.
this is now a very interesting part of your career now. You have completely left the whole major labels now, and you've gone independent. What have you learned from being with the majors like Rope-A-Dope and Blue Note now? Where are you at right now musically?
Well, I mean, what I learned from them is, I mean, that was an entirely different era. I mean, when I was on Blue Note, I mean, I could sell 50,000 records, I didn't really make any money from them because, it's not a great system. I don't want to blame anyone, but the music, it was a plantation system ultimately, and you're a sharecropper basically. But now that it's, you could get a career started back then a lot easier, especially for those of us who don't have any money, who, a lot of people have, lucky for them, they have parents with money or people that will bankroll their careers, and so they have that money that they can be able to get their music out there with. For people like me, the idea was that back in the day, a record company was essentially a gatekeeper, and if you were good enough, it didn't always matter. Good didn't always matter. It's not really a meritocracy. If you were good enough or saleable enough, they would put up the money, and they would essentially be the sugar daddy, So that it's good to get your career started, but then when you're really rolling, I think you really have to do it yourself. Once you get the momentum, you have to take over and start driving. And I've been doing that for like 3 or 4 years now, doing my own records, and it's a little different, but I like it better because I can do it when I want and how I want, and I don't have to sell a ton of copies to break even,
You're also one of the few artists too. I mean, Soul Live does it also, but you encourage people to record your shows and post them online for free, and I think that's a wonderful thing because it's getting you out there even further to people who've never heard of Charlie Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a whole culture. I mean, back in the day, before, we didn't have any of the, whatever you want to call, like the jam band, hip, we didn't have any of that audience. Our audience was very much more like, I guess you would call, like, more kind of urban kind of people, and guitar heads, and and then kind of like people who like kind of groovy music. It didn't happen until later, and I didn't know that a big part of that culture was taping shows. My first instinct was like, taping shows, what are you kidding? But yeah, but it's a great tool in terms of getting your music to people who don't otherwise have a cultural access to your music, and I think that's great, and it's a great thing. And these people are very, very conscientious. There's no one is selling anything, or I mean, people are really just like, they bring their gear and they want to make the best tape, and it's kind of like, they trade tapes like baseball cards.
Playing the 6-string guitar, but how did you form in your head the transformation from 6-string to 7-string and even 8-string guitar?
Right. Well, I mean, it just was more range and more ability to kind of make people move, and even if they're sitting down, to make them feel that rhythm a little more. If it's just guitar, the range on it is just not quite enough to really complete that kind of movement. You know what I mean? So that's why, you know, I like the range that I have.
So is it harder to play simultaneously the bass line, the rhythm, and also improvisation at the same time?
Harder than...
Because you're playing pretty much 2 or 3 different parts at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, is it harder than a 6-string guitar? It's technically way, way more difficult, infinitely more difficult than playing a 6-string guitar. I mean, the degree of technical difficulty is very, very, very high. But it doesn't mean it's musically better or anything like that. It's just a high degree of difficulty. Why I chose that, I don't know. I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank Charlie Hunter for his time, as well as the staff and management here at the Jazz Standard. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.